Layla. Thanks for having me. I'm an avid fan of your videos. I know before as a video consultant, I used to see your videos and I was like, this lady knows what she's doing. Especially with the setups and the workflows. I like the way you stress the setup and the workflows. I must congratulate you on that.
I would love to actually ask you a little bit more about that, because I think your background is going to lend really well to this conversation, which I'm hoping is going to kind of dig into the question of, is ClickUp an ERP? And should it be? And can it replace it, or should it replace it?
Okay, so first you have to define what is ERP, because ERP is sometimes just a three-letter word. An ERP system is basically bring a software with tool that allows an organization to keep everything in one place. So everything, that's your financial part, your operational part, the whole organization, the internet internally, and how you communicate with the outside world. And with large organizations, most of them are very customized for that particular organization. These companies, yes, they communicate with each other using these ERP systems, but they're very rigid and they're very in a controlled environment. So you can't scale using it in different organizations. That's the drawback.
Well, define rigid though. What does that really mean? Because that sounds, technical and...
Technical. Mm-hmm. So rigid would be something that very few people can understand how to capture something, because it's basically the opposite of flexible. So think of Excel. Excel is flexible. You got different rows. If you make a mistake, you can add a row. You can delete a row. Mm-hmm. An ERP system, you don't have that flexibility. You have to put the amount by that column by amount. And if the amount is maybe dollar amount or a euro amount in different parts, you can't change it. Okay, cool. You know what? I want to actually add now a New Zealand dollar. Mm-hmm. It's rigid in terms of that. It's not, you have to get a whole team to now add that different field. So in terms of that, it becomes rigid in terms of if there have to be a change and to capture the items, it also becomes rigid because there's only one way to capture this. And that's become training comes involved, because there's only one way to capture these items and input these things into the system. And that also becomes a big drawback when it comes to onboarding an ERP system.
And if I can dig into that, one thing that I've noticed with clients who are using an ERP system, and promise people watching, we will get to can ClickUp replace that. But when it comes to an ERP system, one thing that I always see as kind of a tell is that usually there's a central administrator or an IT team. And those are the only people that can do the edits that you're talking about. Whereas ClickUp, almost to a fault, everyone can edit elements. The ERP, you're more so just inputting data into the form that someone else built, which, I mean, that seems like it could cause some problems. I'm sure there's a lot of benefits as well, but now one person is designing every input structure for the entire organization.
Correct. And that's why organizations have a full team, an IT team, an outsourced team. That's why we've got so much different types of consultants specialized only in the technical part of the software. Never mind the workflow, never mind what we're trying to get out of it, never mind speaking with the client and understanding their needs, just a team full on technical expertise, how to change something, documentation of when to change it, and it's costly and it takes a lot of resources. And I believe ClickUp, we can talk about later, ClickUp eliminates that whole process.
Yeah.
Because it allows for that flexibility, but in the same way allows you to be in a controlled environment and understand the controls of when something has been changed. So that's the beauty, I believe, of ClickUp and the mix between the ERP and your manual systems like Excel.
Oh, we did talk about Excel.
Excel's become a swear word now.
Yeah. So would you say, based on this, what I'm hearing, if I imagine people listening to this are thinking, wow, they all are saying that ClickUp is great, ERPs are bad, and we should only use ClickUp. But that's not really the case, right? There's a place for both of these things. Could you explain that a little bit more?
Correct. So I look at let's look at what the client requires and where the client is, or where the business owner is in their business. Mainly, if you're on Google and you're searching for a system to work in your business, you're normally a medium-sized business. Because you're on Google. If you weren't a medium-sized business, a large organization, you wouldn't be on Google. You'd be speaking with different players in the market and getting brochures and getting teams around the world to fly to your premises and explain to you what type of system you're going to put in your business. Because the system you put in your business is going to influence everything. It's going to influence how your people at starting point, how they're going to use that system to capture. Yeah. It's going to influence what type of training you're going to use and have in your business to enable them to use that system. And it's an important decision because you're going to hopefully keep that system for a long period. Now, if you're Googling for the system, most probably you're not at an ERP level because you're more a small to medium-sized business, perhaps under 30, under 20 staff complement. And in that case, I define that as a small business. And for a small business to keep the resources of an ERP system, it's first of all costly. Second of all, it takes much more longer to implement. And thirdly, when there's changes in the environment or changes in technology, it's much slower to catch up to that, besides the costs. So ERP will work in terms of if you were maybe a larger organization and you have those resources. And the greatest benefit an ERP system has is it allows you to connect so everything, really everything in one place. It allows you to connect your HR, your financials, your operations, everything in one place because there's modules for each of those. And they built a skeleton and you can get a consultant then to build it to your specific business. You've got specific needs in your business that you have to do. It's maybe very niche, or you want to be set apart to your competitors and your technology is going to be that. So then ERP is for you. But if you're under 5 years old, you're a business owner and you're looking for something just to control your environment, you're looking for something just to monitor what's going on in your day, plan, and just have an operations that's in one place, then you have to look at something that's not as rigid, and something that you actually have control over. And that's not an Excel sheet. Because Excel sheet can be manipulated, it can be changed, it can get lost, it can be overwritten. So I think of ClickUp as an in-betweener, a midpoint that allows you to then achieve similar traits to what you get in an ERP system, but more for a small business owner.
Yeah. And I think it might be helpful just to explain for folks who are completely new to ERP, enterprise resource planning, just for, we probably should have used that at some point. Maybe I'll have it pop up on the screen. But what that really does is it allows you to put data in, and that data can go all of the places it needs to go. You never have to type it in again. You never have to type the information again. You don't have to zap it between tools. It's your own system, your own HQ that's moving all of the information around exactly the way you need it to. And what you're talking about with Excel, which many of we were talking beforehand, many of our clients use Excel. You are typing things in endlessly. You can make some formulas, you can do what you want, but it is very customizable, easy to be deleted, and it's not a controlled interface. And I think that's a piece that's also very different. ERP, very restrictive. You only see the things you need to see. Excel, you see everything. Please don't break the formula. And then ClickUp is in the middle. But something you touched on while you were talking through was this idea of having everything integrated. And I'm sure there are people here who are in the middle of the run. So there's some people now who listen to that and they said, okay, I definitely don't need an ERP. But there's some people who have an ERP, or maybe they're in the 50 to 500 person company. They're kind of middle. And they're thinking, well, we have an ERP. Do I still need ClickUp? And how would you kind of address that? Because I think you have a unique perspective.
Okay, that's a difficult question. If the ERP system is working, keep it. But you can still use your ClickUp as a task management system. So communication between your remote teams. Maybe if you're pivoting to a new business or you're changing something very quickly and your ERP system can't catch up, you can use ClickUp then to maybe bridge that point or just that gap, just meet that gap and use it quickly. I must say I don't have experience with that because the clients I normally work with are below 50 employees, a more smaller type of businesses with lower revenues. So I don't work as my own business with large clients. When I was employed, yes, I did. And actually, when I was employed, I noticed that one part of ERP that most businesses have difficulty with is your project management. Project management in terms of quick turnaround projects that are quick off the cuff, needs to be completed within 3 months. You can't build this ERP system and customize it in that quick form. So if the business allows you to do that, and they are proactive enough, and they allow the staff to then maybe manage their own tasks their way, and to give that flexibility, then I believe ClickUp can definitely work in an organization like that.
I think I really like the example you gave of projects, one-off projects and initiatives, or starting a new service line. Because I think in my experience with clients who have ERPs and use ClickUp, it's very much like that. They might take the main thing that they do every single day on a day-to-day basis, like new product development or launching, an e-commerce business is what I'm thinking of in my mind, just the product database and putting things on the website. That is managed in the ERP because it is critical to their operations. It shoots things off to fulfillment and orders and, all that kind of stuff. But when it comes to, a team meeting or planning their retreat, planning new hires, HR departments, back office, expense approvals, they use something like ClickUp to fill the gaps, the cracks between the really rigid system. Because for them, they're thinking, well, we have 50 people. I don't need a whole HR department quite yet, but I need something for the person who's doing HR functions to have a way to organize this. And it sounds like that's kind of where you're looking at it too, that ClickUp is the filler.
Correct, 100%, because in those organizations, they're still using Excel. So if they could see like, I've got this Excel sheet or a Google sheet that I'm sharing, that ClickUp can definitely replace. And that will actually translate to an easier, more efficient way of communicating across the whole workplace, I believe. So if I go back in corporate, or if I do go back to corporate, definitely I'll be taking my ClickUp with me, and I'll hopefully convince some of my team members to please, let's use this interface instead of a Excel sheet.
Yeah. And I know you have some interesting thoughts about separating different divisions of the business. So I want to get to that in a moment. But because we're here, and I know people are going to be listening to this conversation and thinking, what are they talking about? Could you break down just briefly the difference between Excel and ClickUp? Why is it that you would bring it back with you? Especially, what's the big difference for people who haven't ever experienced project management tools before?
So with project management tools, if you're working for a large organization or you're working in teams, you got a specific Excel document and you understand the document because that's your golden template, your golden formula. You understand that in and out. But another person out there, they want to see the information differently. They want to edit some information. They want to change a few things, or just understand one part, but they want to ask questions on another part, or they want to update their parts of what they did. Now, yes, you can share the Google sheet or you can share the Excel sheet, you can email the Excel sheet, but there's no control. You can't monitor it. You can't communicate actively on it. And there's all those risks I spoke in the beginning where it gets lost. And the most important thing is it's too easy to change. And how do you capture information onto your Excel sheet? Because if they capture information wrong, then your formulas go wrong. Your pivot tables break. The graphs that you had on the headings will change. Then the whole Excel sheet is basically rendered useless. Yeah. So yes, if you have your own business as a one-man show, you have 2 people in the team, yes, you can use Excel. It'll work for you. You understand it. But as soon as you're communicating with different departments or different team members and you want to collaborate, then sure, ClickUp is going to be, I believe, your first choice and your best choice.
We're not biased at all, though.
No, I'm totally biased because before I became a ClickUp consultant, I always make the story to all the clients. Before I was a ClickUp consultant, I didn't go out to become a ClickUp consultant. Okay. Yep. How it happened, it came natural in terms of I was using ClickUp in my own practice, and I chose ClickUp above the popular Trello and Asana 3 years ago. I mean, 2018, no one heard of ClickUp. And I was looking for a tool, and I knew about ERP, and I researched some ERP systems, and I knew I can understand it, but I knew the drawbacks of maintaining it and for my staff members to use it, the training involved and the reskilling. So I said I went against ERP. And then I went to Trello and I went to Asana, and I noticed that was the popular ones out there, but I saw its limitations. Immediately I saw its limitations. And I said, if I'm going to scale my business to where I wanted to go as an accounting firm, there's a thing called ClickUp. And I don't know how I came about it. I don't know if it was on Google, but somehow it popped up. And luckily it did. And it started with the templates. And from the templates, it just moved on, and I then designed my own workflows, and then my clients started asking about it. So my accounting clients started asking about this ClickUp thing. And it always came out about, Asad, you give me QuickBooks, but how can I take that same concept and maintain my operations the same way? Is there a tool that can do the same thing, but for my operational part, in terms of my tasks, in terms of allocating work, in terms of understanding where everything is in the process? What tool can I use? And back then I couldn't recommend any tool. So then afterwards I started recommending the tool of ClickUp to my clients. And that's how it grew, because I started onboarding them, started explaining to them, started providing training. And your videos also became a great help, because I could see the potential of what ClickUp can do. So if you're watching this, Layla's got very good content on what ClickUp can do. So if you're still confused on what ClickUp can do, just watch one of our videos, and you'll see that there's a lot of bottlenecks in your business that can actually be solved using ClickUp.
I appreciate it. And I like to hear that story, because I think one part I want to highlight, which we have both done, because I had a very similar journey getting into ClickUp. I think I found ClickUp mentioned in some forum, buried in the internet, and I had to search, what is this ClickUp thing? And then you get a pillow in the back of your house because it's that good. But you went to templates first and then built out your workflows. Now you kind of recommend the opposite now, as do I. We talked about this at the beginning just a bit. I feel like that could be an interesting conversation, because I know a lot of folks, maybe you've seen it as well, they try to replace QuickBooks with ClickUp. Or they try to, just blend it all together. And could you talk a little bit about the value of separating those two things?
So ERP, let's go to ERP. So ERP, people understand ERP, or they work for a large organization, so they understand what the potential of basically a management tool can do, or business management tool can do. They know there's one management tool called Microsoft Dynamics, or you can call it SAP, or whatever other type of Oracle type of systems you have. So they understand everything in one place. So now when ClickUp says everything in one place, or all can replace any software, the first thing they think about is, okay, cool. So this is going to replace my financial data. This is going to replace my accounting system. That's naturally what happmes.
It's what they say.
It's to replace it. So please, can you set it up, ClickUp, so they can do that? And then some alarm bells go up. And because I speak, I believe, technical, because I come from an accounting background. So sometimes it's hard for me to converse and to explain to the client the reason why you have to separate it, why you should separate it, number one. And number two, explain to them the limitations of ClickUp, if I could say that, or if I can call it that.
Yeah.
I don't think ClickUp wants to be an accounting system. I don't think that's what their plan is. There are leaders in the industry, and there's a reason why they are leaders, because there's a lot of legislation. There's a lot of, how can I say, training that goes involved in running an accounting system. Yeah. There's a specific way to capture bills into a system. There's a special way to reconcile that. There's a special way to do a bank reconciliation. There's a special way to send a quote out to a client and then reference it back to an invoice. So those systems that have been built, and that software has been built. So why rebuild something that's already there, that exists already? What's the purpose?
Yeah.
So that's the reason why I try to just take the conversation a bit back and understand the purpose of why and what they're trying to achieve. Where is the bottleneck? Is the bottleneck the accounting part, or is the bottleneck the operational part? And if that's where you're feeling the problem, which is normally the operations, especially now that everyone's gone remote work and teams are all across, not in the same premises, how can you bring those teams together? And if that's where the problem is, fix that problem. Why not try and fix everything at once? That's my recommendation. So try and keep the things separate. I can go on more and more about why you should keep it separate and the risks of bringing it all together.
I would love to hear just if you have any anecdotes, and I won't put you on the spot, but any stories that would help people understand what this means, because I think a lot of people are like, okay, it might be helpful to give an example of what exactly this looks like.
Okay. So let's say you've got an accounting department and they have to raise an invoice to a client. Okay, cool. I have to invoice this client because they owe us money. We have an online shop. Okay, let's call it an online shop. Let's call it a retail outlet or a wholesale company. We build a machine and it takes 3 months to build this machine. So at the end of the 3 months, we've documented everything. We've gone to the different departments. We've come to the last department, the accounting department. So please, you've quoted this client already. And now we have to invoice the client. We need to get that money. And maybe they gave us a 50% deposit and now they owe us another 50% on delivery. Fine. That's a normal scenario in a business. Now the client would ask, why do I have to send my invoice out? And why do I have to notify my staff in a QuickBooks system? Why can't I have that in ClickUp? That's the general request. The large organizations can do that. Why can't I? So then my first thing would be is we have to understand a large organization who is using an ERP system. Yes, they can do that. So when the thing is delivered, delivery notice sent out, cool, invoice is raised. Done. Streamlined, simple. But the issues with that is if there's a problem with the operational staff saying, cool, we are completed this project, let's deliver it, or they change the status from in progress to complete, and you have an automated invoice to a client, that client's not going to be very happy if there was someone in operations that by mistake moved something from work in progress to complete. And then there's going to be more resources in terms of contacting the client to apologize or to explain what happened. It's going to take more resources to find out in your system, has this been invoiced or not, because everything is so automated. And it's going to take even more resources and understanding to allow an accounting staff member to speak with someone in operations and explain the differences and why and how this happened. And the linking of those departments is not always easy. And that's why most big businesses have a lot of staff and they allocate a lot of resources just to bridge the gap between the operational part and the financial part. So in that case, in real life, that's how in real life it will work, the whole process flow. Now comes the question, how do you do it? I explained to you the problem of why you shouldn't do it like that, or the risks of doing it like that. What's the alternative? So there's two alternatives. The first one is you can link your QuickBooks to your ClickUp. I don't have experience on that. There's software like, there's different like Zap accounts and all the type of integrations that you can do that Zap's one thing to another. Yes, it can be done. But if that Zap goes wrong, what happens then? Who would you call? Because that software, you can't call that software for support and say, you know what, we made a mistake here, please correct it. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is, I believe there's going to be more development in this field going forward. I'm sure there'll be more software companies out there that will find a way to integrate the software, which I sincerely believe in. I wish I could be part of that team that's doing that integration because I believe there's a lot of value in that. But before we get to that point and while we're still building ourselves in ClickUp, I think the alternative would be workflow. Workflow in terms of, yes, have your operations on ClickUp, but then allow that operations in ClickUp to communicate things to your accounting department. So still keep that a process a little bit more manual because it's going to save you time in correcting mistakes that happened automatically. That's just my belief. So if you can keep the communication that allows it, okay, cool. If I click complete, let me send an email or let me send a notification or a dashboard for finance to understand, okay, cool. These are the things that you must raise. These are invoices that should be raised, or this is what should be raised because we got a deposit already. Some form of communication so it doesn't have to go back and forth email between the two departments. So that's where ClickUp is going to help you a lot. It's going to allow you to communicate with your financial department much more easier and almost live. And then with that said, cool, then finance will get a notification. Fine, see on the dashboard, cool, project completed. oh, project is almost delivered. Cool. Send the invoice. Then to raise that invoice manually, it's going to take you 5 minutes to raise the invoice on QuickBooks. That's my recommendation.
I think you've hit on something that's very important, and you've said it, I think maybe even before we started recording, but the idea of automating is only as good as what you're putting into it. And for small businesses, we are not consistent. That is the beauty of small business. We're fun and exciting, but also a little chaotic. And putting a very rigid system on top of a wily business is not you're going to cost more in fixing things and you're trying to make yourself as rigid as the system. And I don't think I've quite heard it described that way before, but I think that's a really good way to think about it. If you don't want to be, or if you're not ready to be rigid, to be set in your ways and have a very strict procedure, don't put a strict system in place. And I think that the Zapier example is another one, because that's something that is appropriate for a small business, setting up a Zap between ClickUp and QuickBooks, or from ClickUp to whatever. If you do not have consistency in your process, automating that process is, once again, even if it's just a Zap, could cause costly mistakes. And sometimes manual is actually faster in some ways.
Correct. Correct. I agree with you. But I have to ask you, what is your definition of automation? Maybe the listeners out there don't understand what this automation is. So maybe let's define the word automation in terms of your processes. And then, because why I say that is because a lot of clients on first discovery call, they'll say, I want to automate my process. And I think there's maybe a misconception between the word automate, because it's been used, it's a big buzzword now about automating everything. So maybe I could ask you, what is your definition of automation?
So I'm going to actually pass the buck, because there's someone on YouTube who had a very good video on this. So I'm just going to quote him. So I'm taking a pass. Greg Hickman actually described automation as it being done. It's just it happening without human interaction of any form. And that is automation. But he differentiated automation from automatic, which I think is what most people actually want, but they don't know to use that word. Where automatic means you might have templates, you might have some things happening automated, but there's a human kind of steering the ship, pressing the go button, double checking things. And that automatic process, I feel like, is, at least to me, when people say automated, you don't want an automated client experience. You don't want that. No one wants that. You want an automatic experience that's structured and feels easy, but isn't a robotic thing. I mean, is that about what your definition is, or do you have a slightly different interpretation?
Perfect. That's a perfect definition. I think I've had the definition in my head, but I couldn't articulate it. Okay, that's a good one. I haven't heard the difference between automate and automatic. I think that's something I can definitely take. That's something that's a good one to explain to someone who is, I think that's a very good one, because I think because what I try to do with automate is I try to ask the client, what is automation in your reference book? What are you trying to automate? Because automation only can occur if it goes across a line which is consistent all the time. Every single time it's the same consistency. And as a small business, as you said, nothing is consistent.
Some things.
Okay, my apologies. Not saying nothing is consistent, but most things, there's different ways of, the end goal is there, yes, but there's different ways of getting there. So it's hard to automate, or to start with automation. But that's what I try to explain is, don't start with automation. So that's where I try to step back again. Don't start with automation, rather build the process, build the workflow, understand where the bottlenecks are, and then from there start the automation after that is working. Because as you said, sometimes it's easier, what I've seen, doing something manual with manual human intervention works better than having something that's automated. And then if you go back in the system to correct what mistake was made in the system.
Absolutely. And I think even just setting up in ClickUp, there is a time cost to even templating things. So when you start with the workflow, you can consolidate some of the really messy stuff before you even do, let's take it a step further. Maybe you're just using Excel. There's a time cost of setting up the Excel spreadsheet. There's a time cost of setting up the ClickUp template, and there's a huge time cost of setting up an ERP solution. And if we just start a step earlier, you're saying you can kind of reduce that cost before you even get started.
Correct. Because if you're going to put the wrong workflow in your setup, then you're going to have something that's wrong all the time.
Yeah.
And then you have to go back to the drawing board and then adjust it. And you can adjust it in ClickUp, because I did that. I started with ClickUp like that same way. I adjusted in ClickUp.
Yeah.
Add a new drop down. I put a new label. Okay, cool. Must use label, the drop down. Okay, cool. Now let me use a checkbox here. Yeah. So when I step back, then I ask myself, what do I want to actually achieve? Okay, for bottlenecks that's passed, let's use checkbox. Use label in cases of this and use tags for that. So I've got a systematic way of how I think, and that's the way I build the system for other clients or for myself. But before I start, I first ask the client, or I ask the people I'm engaging with, is where's your bottlenecks, and do you have some form of process before you can actually go into ClickUp? Because if you're going to work from templates, or you're going to see me as a template designer, it's not going to work. Yes, I can work on my template if I understand your business, but what comes first? So yeah, I can't say that enough.
So what do you think of the pop-up of ClickUp's template marketplace? If I can put you on the spot, they have a template marketplace now that anyone can submit to. There's a lot of templates being sold. I have templates in my membership for full transparency.
I got templates myself. I also got templates, but I put a disclaimer with my templates. And the template disclaimer I have is, with a template, I believe must come some form of training video and some form of, why I sell the template is because I show what can be done. Starting point, it's very good as a starting point. I mean, I believe in templates because that's what sold me on ClickUp, because it shows me what the potential is. So I believe in templates as a starting point, a reference point to understand how the software works, the capabilities of the software. But a long-term goal and to use it forever, it's a big no-no. Yeah. So I also sell templates as a basic offering, but my templates come with a training video on how to use it, number one. And number two, it comes with almost like a follow-up on, I don't know, maybe digress a little bit, but if you look at how ClickUp is, it's like a software. It's got to do with three divisions: your capturing division, your monitoring division, and your reporting dashboard division. Those three. Now, templates can form in all three of those categories or parts. So you ideally, for a system to work, you want all three. You want to have a place where you can capture things easily. You want to have a system or a template that then whatever's captured, you can at least see if it's complete, some control environment, has it been done correctly, must more be added. And then you want to one day look back at the data, maybe a week later, a month later, but have some form of reporting, like what actually happened, where are my bottlenecks, what analysis can I do on this data? So if a template can bring all those three together, then it's a good template. So what I try to do is, where is the template? Is it the caption part? Is it the reporting part? Where are you in the template? And then from there, provide some form of after service or recommendation that, you know what, please, you're going to have to come back to me, because if you're capturing this template, is it working, number one? And number two, what type of reporting would you want out of it? So that's where I believe templates fit into the whole ecosystem of ClickUp.
Yeah. I do something very similar. I was resistant, and I don't know if you were the same way. I really didn't want to sell or provide templates for the longest time, just because I think, while I agree with you, they are fantastic starting points, I think sometimes people view them as the solution. Like, this template is going to show me how my business runs. And
biggest mistake.
It doesn't work that way. Efficiency plus humanity is effectiveness. And templates, they don't account for your own humans, right? Your team culture, your workflows, what Bob in accounting prefers to see. You can't do that when you're trying to just have something prescribed to you. And like we talked about, small businesses, they're different, they move fast. And it's very hard to take someone else's template and just treat it as, the way. So I did something very similar. We have templates in ClickUp, but they are paired with training. And since we have a community format, there's constant discussion of how can I adapt this? And that is the money. Like when you can think of templates as a starting point to adapt, exactly what you said. And you have, and I should just say this to wrap us up here, you have a YouTube channel where people can probably see more of these examples, and you run webinars and such to help people really understand these different types of use cases of ClickUp, correct?
Correct. So what I try to do on my YouTube channel is I try to keep it like, I try to show where I struggled, and then just show how people can avoid that struggling point. And number two, I try to, when I consult and I do a discovery call, I try to put what the client requested and the bottlenecks they found, or what the expectations were on the ClickUp or the confusion. I try to bring that into my YouTube videos. So it avoids myself from repeating myself. So I could maybe then just show them and showcase, here's a few things if you worried about or concerned about what a user can do compared to what a member can do, compared to what a guest can do, that's something. Or direct them to your channel if you got content, because it helps to clear the confusion. That's what I believe. Because there's some stuff we take for granted, we understand. But if you're new to this whole thing, like myself, I was also new to it. And at that time, I remember emailing ClickUp, emailing them like, what's the difference in guests? Can I do this with guests? Because what is ultimately the question? It comes down to how much I'm going to pay for ClickUp at the end of the day per month. Can I add someone as a guest? Will it work? So I think that's the starting point. So that's what I try to do. And then I have my monthly webinars. So the first Tuesday of every month, I go through an hour and a half setup type of thing, keep it more interactive on the live video. And then I followed up with the Q&A session specifically for people on that group who joined. And the sessions are very small. So currently, because it's very new, the channel is very new, the sessions are very small. So sometimes we even get very personal if we can, without divulging information.
Too much, yeah.
Too much information, we can actually do a good setup. So the website is called CFO.co. So CFOHire.co. I got the whole webinar series out there under the live webinar. And yeah, we can maybe put a link out there for that.
Yeah, I will make sure that it gets into the description, and you may want to watch out because your small intimate groups may not be small and intimate after we put this video out there. And hopefully you guys watching take us up on this that's a very generous offer to have people come in and be able to ask questions. So that is a stellar opportunity for anyone trying to learn ClickUp and avoid.
I'm doing it for this year only. I can't promise it's going to be forever. I'm doing it for this year. So I already committed myself to this year, on top of my duties as a new father to a baby. Yeah. So,
which, speaking of which, we should probably let you get back to. Thank you so much for taking the time, and even with the new baby, to come on here and talk to us about systems and accounting and ERPs and all that good stuff. And I will put all of your information below. And I guess until next time, thanks so much for joining me, Asad.
Thank you, Layla. Thanks for having me, and thanks to the community, and thanks for bringing a community and creating a community. I think you're one of the first people I saw on YouTube, and to see how you've grown. I mean, it's all grown organically. I can see there's no advertising, because people can see that here's someone that's actually wanting to help and bring something productive and create something that was not there before. I mean, we're really in a new space, and I just hope this space continues to grow together as a community, and just to see the end goal. The end goal ultimately is to be human. I mean, allow computers to do the rest, but for us to be human, so we can still have and play and do our own thing. Because I mean, growing up, everything was fun. Yeah. And ultimately, I think with the technology where it's going now, we can continue having that fun going forward while we still run our businesses. And yeah, that's the ultimate aim.
For anyone watching this, we are adding this later because we were so excited about this idea that we wanted to make sure it was shared with you.
Cool. So back to your ERP story and now financial part and operational part. If you look at QuickBooks Online, and if you look at the other type of accounting software out there like Xero, what changed the game on cloud? Because in the past it was desktop and your information was in one space and only you could see that information. And if you wanted other people to see it, you'd have to export it in a file and you have to share it via basically in another format. But what cloud has done is cloud has allowed people to through APIs, I'm again using technology, to share that information across different places with different people without changing the integrity of the information. And what that allowed us to do with cloud is allowed us to build a marketplace and allowed us to control our operations. So if you look at the accounting software out there, you'd have a operational software to help you with your inventory management. You'd have an operational software to help you with your signing of documents. You'd have another one for your HR function. You'd have another one for just document management. There's all these apps that business owners want, which accounting software can't do. And QuickBooks and Xero and those Sage understand that. So what they said is, we're not going to compete with that space. That's not where our ability lies. Our expertise lies in accounting software. So let's create a marketplace and then let those people over there who's good at software build these apps, and then that can integrate into your accounting software. Mm-hmm. So basically almost like a scalable type of ERP or a different type of way of thinking.
Modular.
Yeah, modular. So that works. But now what ClickUp has done, where I believe ClickUp is a good fit, is imagine having one interface and one workflow in ClickUp, which can then be used to replace all those marketplace apps that we're using, and then use that to communicate with your QuickBooks or your Xero or your accounting software. Mm-hmm. So I think that's where the future of where, and that's where the position of where ClickUp finds itself now. With the doc views, with the different charts, the different dashboards you can create, the different workplaces and workspaces you can use in your different departments. You can now have an inventory department. You can now have a HR department. You can now have a warehousing department. And once it's customized in the right way, it will eventually replace those apps that were used. And yeah, I think that's where the future lies. So then you're basically creating a one place to actually keep your workplace in.
So rather than having an accounting software with operations stuff kind of cobbled together and plugged in, we'd have an operations software that maybe integrates with an accounting software. But in that work management tool, which I think is what they're getting at with that term, we'd have apps. And I know, not in 2021, but I know in the long-term roadmap of ClickUp, Zeb has mentioned in various events of the idea of having Click apps or widgets be external tools. And I just want to clarify that for people listening. This currently isn't the current state. You can kind of do it, but it's not, it's not like Xero's marketplace. Mm-hmm. But the future of Click apps, the future of widgets might be a QuickBooks widget or right? I mean, that's kind of where I keep thinking they're heading.
I look at one type of Click app, okay? Out there building software, one Click app. If I was a programmer, I'll be doing this. A simple scanning tool. Imagine you could scan your QR code or scan a barcode and shift, as a logistics company, your boxes. It's in storage, it went to this one, it's now in a truck, it's now at the client, it's complete, it's delivered. Imagine you could scan that process using a scan of a phone, and that automatically updated your statuses in ClickUp or updated a custom field in your ClickUp.
Yeah, and that interface was in ClickUp, not integrated. Or,
not integrated. So imagine having that market space and, okay, cool, we do scanning of, or asset management. Imagine having an asset management software app in your ClickUp. Mm-hmm. So now what happens is it's more easier for you to build your workflows, much easier to build your processes because you're using it in one space called ClickUp.
Yeah.
Whereas currently what's happening is you have this cloud software system, but you've got all these apps all over the place, and they're with different loggings. They've got a different user interface. Mm-hmm. They've got different departments you have to call for if something goes wrong. Mm-hmm. And then obviously the cost involved. You've got different subscriptions for all of them. And then sometimes they get bought out. I mean, if you look at ThreadGecko was a popular type of inventory management system. They got bought out by QuickBooks. And by them being bought out by QuickBooks, people in Xero that were using it, I mean, I don't know what the lifeline is, but you currently, if you're on Xero, you can't use ThreadGecko. Wow. Imagine an accounting firm who used ThreadGecko as an upskilled all their staff to implement ThreadGecko for their clients. And now all of a sudden, boom, gone. And we're seeing this happen across all the other types of app in the industry, which are getting bought out by the larger companies.
Consolidation.
Yeah, consolidation. So I think ClickUp, I believe in 5 years' time, or once that marketplace comes up, and once the maturity of that marketplace comes out, that's going to be the future of what ClickUp is going to be. It's going to really position itself to your operational part and make it really easy to implement, start up, and then be flexible to your marketplace or to your business and how you want it to look like. I think that's the future.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I cannot wait until we start hearing ClickUp themselves refer to themselves as work management. They're already doing that, but not the app to replace them all, but the app to manage them all. And I don't think that conversation's yet happening, but I think this is the future, to be clear, but this is exactly where we're all looking for it to go. I think that's thank you so much for sharing that.
Correct. No, thanks for that.